Halaqah, and we just concluded, maybe a little bit. We just concluded the Battle of Uhud, and we started talking a little bit about the aftermath of Uhud. We're more than halfway through Seerah, so hopefully somewhere around the end of the summer we should be done. And I think I'll give it a rest after that for a while and do something different for a year or two, and then maybe come back to this in a few years. The questions that I have posed up there are legitimate questions that a lot of those who attended the Battle of Uhud had afterwards. Whether they were people who had strong iman or weak iman, whether it was some of the Sahaba or some of the Munafiqeen, these questions collectively were asked. I mean, there were things that were said. Rumors travel and word gets around. So the Prophet ﷺ was hearing all of these discussions that were occurring, even occurring on the way back from Hamra al-Asad, from the battle that happened right after Uhud, when the Prophet ﷺ tried to, he maneuvered to establish some degree of dignity in front of Quraysh and scare Quraysh off for a while. But even on the way back from that, the Sahaba and those maybe who were new to Islam were asking questions. And they didn't know how to answer these questions. And what I do through these sessions is I quote for you verses from the second half of Surah Ali Imran, from ayah 101 to 200. These ayat address the Battle of Uhud. That's all they do. They just address the Battle of Uhud and all that happened during it. And at some point, inshallah, we'll do a full tafsir of the surah, and we'll go through all these verses slowly, and we'll talk about them with a certain degree of depth, because I think they're important. I just kind of comb over them through these sessions with the intention of just making sure you understand, you see or you recognize how the Quran came, how the Quran was revealed. It was addressing the problems. It came to address the challenges, the obstacles that the Sahaba had in their lives, teaching them and educating them. And in order for us to benefit from the Quran, we have to know what happened, and then read the Quran so that we can learn, so that we can draw the analogies and take the lessons for ourselves, which in many situations we don't. And there are a lot of what we go through in our lives has happened before. You don't need to be religious to believe that. We're creatures of habits, and it's very rare that someone brings something new, like a new experience or a new challenge. We're all, whatever happened to you or is happening to you in your life, it happened to someone before you at some point. If you just figure out, you'll learn it. And the Quran covers all of the major themes. All of the major themes that we need to learn from have been covered in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Battle of Uhud was an extremely, how do I put this, harsh experience. It was very harsh. They lost. And even if you come and argue with me that militarily they didn't really lose, they went home feeling like they did. And that's all that matters. Right? What really matters is how they felt. They felt that it was a defeat. Whether it was or whether it wasn't is not really my concern. They went home feeling defeated. They saw their Prophet ﷺ injured and scarred. They carried the bodies of some of the greatest Muslims that ever lived, Mus'ab and Hamza and Anas. And they took these people home to bury them in the graveyard of what today is the Maqbarat Uhud, Shuhada Uhud. So with this experience, and of course the 40 people who ran down the mountain didn't listen. Some of them were martyred and died during the battle, and some of them didn't. They lived on, and they're walking home with them. You have people who left in the middle of the battle. They left. They went back to Medina. They argue that they did it with good intentions in their hearts, but they still left. They shouldn't have left. This is an agreed upon point. You don't run in the middle of a battle regardless of why you think it's a good idea. And they did. They ran home. They went back to Medina. They came back, but they ran. They shouldn't have done that. They know. So how do we feel about these sinners? Should we, if you remember at the beginning of the battle, the Prophet ﷺ had went to the Sahaba and to the people of Medina asking, what should they do? Do they leave and fight them outside of Medina, or do they stay inside and basically fortify the city? And the majority of the Shabab said, no, we want to leave. So they left. It led to a horrible loss. The Prophet ﷺ paid for that loss with his life and the life of the people he loved. So do they ask this question again, or is it that, okay, we've established that consulting the masses is not a good idea, and maybe we just make the decisions and you all just kind of fall in line and follow along. How could you lose a battle with the Prophet ﷺ with you? How is that even possible? Right? Like if you read the story of Talut and Dawood, they took into the battle with them وَبَقِيَّةٌ مِمَّا تَرَكَ آلُ مُوسَى وَآلُ هَارُونَ تَحْمِلُهُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ. The tabut that had within it some scriptures and pieces of clothing of Harun and just things that came from Harun and Musa alayhi salatu. They would carry them with them into battle as barakah, as something that they would use as, you have Muhammad alayhi salatu with you, how did you lose? It became a philosophical question. How is it possible that we lose and he's with us? Where were the malaika in the midst of all of this? We know that they were there for Badr. Were they not? Did they not come for Uhud? And if they did, well, why didn't we still lose if that's the case? How does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala see us after this? Are we now worthy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wrath? Will we never find rida from Him subhanahu wa ta'ala after this horrible mistake that we've made and this loss that we have suffered? What about the people who ran? What would have happened if we stayed in Medina? That if question. If we stayed in Medina, they would all live. None of them would have died if we stayed in Medina. I'm not saying that's correct. I'm just saying that's what they said. That's what people were saying. If we stayed in Medina, would we have lost all of these people? Would they have been martyred? These are legit questions. I bet you that you can probably draw analogies to each question from your own life. I guarantee it. That if you take a moment and think about these questions, you can probably figure out how you could ask a question like that regarding something that happened to you in your life. Maybe not the exact same, obviously the context will be different, but the same idea. The same philosophical challenge that you'll have. The ideological obstacle that you may carry. Which is why I believe reading the second part of Ali Imran is really important. Like all of Ali Imran, the whole Quran is important, obviously. All of Ali Imran is beautiful. But the second piece that talks about these challenges, I think are very important. The last halaqah, this is right before Ramadan, I went through a number of these verses. So I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm just going to go through a few of them, and then we'll kind of move on. One of the answers that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala offered, وَمَا جَعَلَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بُشْرَى لَكُمْ وَلِتَطْمَئِنَّ قُلُوبُكُمْ بِهِ وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَكِيمِ. Talking about the malaika. That the malaika are only a bushra. They're just good news. We're just strengthening your morale. It's not the malaika that grant you nasr. It's not the malaika that bring you victory. Allah is the one who brings you victory. Allah will deliver it to you or won't, depending on how you behave. It's not the malaika. And that being said, Imam Bukhari in his Sahih and Imam Muslim, they narrate, I think from Anas, I can't remember if it was Anas or if it was one of the other Sahaba who were there on the day of Uhud. Some narrations point out that Ali said this, that he said, رَأَيْتُ رَجُلَيْنِ يَلْبَسَانِ الْأَبْيَضَ يُنَافِحَانِ عَنْ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ يَوْمَ أُحُدٍ مَا رَأَيْتُهُمَا مِنْ بَعْدُ قَطَّ. On the day of Uhud, I saw two men standing beside the Prophet ﷺ fighting people off. They were dressed different than all of us, and I never saw them again, indicating that the Prophet ﷺ was not abandoned on the day of Uhud. It's just there's a lesson that needed to be learned. And I find that this lesson from Uhud has not been learned yet. We have not learned this lesson yet. We talk about it, we haven't learned it yet. We have still not, in my opinion, as Muslims, wrapped our heads around the idea that there is no nepotism in Islam. There's no nepotism in the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just because you're a Muslim doesn't mean that you're going to be treated differently when it comes to following the rules. If there's an army and it has a leader, and the leader tells the army to do something and the army doesn't listen, will that army win the battle? You don't need to know what religion that army follows. You don't need to know. You know that they're going to lose. If an army breaks and divides amongst itself, if there are people within that army who are not going to follow the command of their commander, of their leader, and they're going to go and do their own thing, that's a lost battle. You don't need any details. Just because they're Muslim doesn't mean it's not going to make up for that. We still think, many of us still feel that. Many of us still feel that we can get away by doing maybe 50% of the job and get the results. No. Because you're Muslim, you have to do 110%. Because you're Muslim, you're required to do even more than 100%, like more than beyond the limit of what you're capable of. Many of us feel that we do 50%, khalas, we're Muslim, the other 50% can be filled in with the fact that we're Muslim. No. That's not how this works. The verses came and replied to the question when they were saying, does Allah hate? وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. And don't feel weakened by this. And don't feel depressed by this. وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ. And you still have the upper hand. إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. If you are truly believers. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not hate you. This is not a sign of His wrath. You made a mistake. Don't let that mistake ruin you. Don't let that mistake define you. إِن يَمْسَسْكُمْ قَرْحٌ. If you have now experienced a difficulty, pain, an injury, qarh. Qarh is like something that's sore, a soreness of some sort. إِن يَمْسَسْكُمْ قَرْحٌ فَقَدْ مَسَّ الْقَوْمَ قَرْحٌ مِثْلُهُ. The people that you fought, they suffered a similar loss the time before. They have felt a similar pain. وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. And this is how life is. One day you're on top and one day you're not. One day you succeed and one day you fail. Don't use your failure as means to feel depressed and feel self-loathe and lose self-esteem and lose hope. The Quran came and told them, وَلَا تَهِنُوا. And don't lose your self-esteem. That's what al-hawan is, when you lose your self-esteem. That's what al-hawan means. Al-hawan in Arabic, when you're pointing someone else that they're in a state of hawan, that means they're in a state where they don't see themselves worthy of respect anymore. They have given up their dignity. وَلَا تَهِنُوا. Never do that. وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا. And don't be depressed. Al-huzn here is not sadness, it's depression. It's sadness that causes you not to be able to do your job anymore. وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ. In the eyes of Allah, you're still the upper hand. You're still the ones who are carrying the banner of al-haqq, of righteousness. In kuntum mu'minin, if you're still believers. If you still continue to carry in your heart what you carried when you walked into Uhud. So why did this happen? وَلِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَيَتَّخِذَ مِنكُمْ شُهَدَاءَ وَاللَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الظَّالِمِينَ وَلِيُمَحِّصَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَيَمْحَقَ الْكَافِرِينَ. But these things happen, and losses occur, and pain occurs, and agony, and suffering. Why? So that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can expose the true believers and choose from amongst those believers martyrs, examples, people who He will later hold as the role model for others. And Allah does not love those who oppress. وَلِيُمَحِّصَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. التمحيص is when something, when they, how do diamonds come about? A lot of friction, right? A lot of friction, a lot of heat. You have to put a lot to make that to make that jewel, to make that gem. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, they undergo tamhis. A lot of friction. Why? So that their true colors and their true essence can shine through. So that gem can now, you get rid of everything around it, because gems are usually pretty small, surrounded by a lot of gunk. A lot of tamhis has to happen so that that crystal can now be seen. وَلِيُمَحِّصَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَيَمْحَقَ الْكَافِرِينَ. And the kafirin who have no essence will just be destroyed into nothing. They'll just be crushed and they'll be gone. Doesn't matter. They had no essence to begin with, so they'll give up. They'll give up midway anyways. Halfway through, they'll throw in the towel. But the mu'min will stick to it. And yes, it's difficult, a lot of friction, but it will bring out the best of them. And their crystals and their gems will be seen. Will be seen. أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةِ. Or you thought, after listening to this, the ayah comes and says, you thought, تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةِ, they would enter Jannah. وَلَمَّا يَعْلَمِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا مِنكُمْ وَيَعْلَمَ الصَّابِرِينَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has yet to expose amongst you those who strive for His sake and those who persevere. The answer is no. No, of course not. Of course not. وَلَقَدْ كُنْتُمْ تَمَنَّوْنَ الْمَوْتَ مِنْ قَبْلِ أَن تَلْقَوْهُ فَقَدْ رَأَيْتُمُوهُ وَأَنْتُمْ تَنْظُرُونَ. And indeed, you used to talk, before Uhud, you all talked about, yes, I want to die for the sake of Allah. I want to die for the sake of Allah. And then you saw it with your own eye. You saw death on the day of Uhud. How did you do? The ayah doesn't come in. The ayah doesn't come and say exactly that, but it just points it out to the Sahaba. When you saw it, فَقَدْ رَأَيْتُمُوهُ, when you saw death with your own eyes on that day, how did you all respond? A lesson for the Sahaba. Some of them did well, and some of them didn't. Some of them stood, and some of them human beings. You don't fail from making one mistake or two mistakes or three mistakes. You fail when you stop learning, you stop striving, you stop trying. You don't admit when you're wrong, and you don't identify your mistake. That's when you fail. When you fail to identify that you didn't do this right, and you fail to learn from the fact that you were mistaken, and you fail to improve and correct that mistake, that's failure. That's failure. Everyone makes mistakes. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a part of the learning process, is making mistakes. The Sahaba made mistakes. They were human beings. Make sure that you don't have the image. If you have an overly polished image of the Sahaba, you can't learn the Quran, by the way. The Quran criticizes the Sahaba all the time. But the Quran also talks about their high status, of their high ranks. Why? Because they are people who had this specific attribute. Whereas when they made mistakes, they admitted those mistakes. They corrected those mistakes. They didn't make them again. That's the real attribute that they carried. But the Quran is filled with verses that points out the mistakes that they made. وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ. The ayah after it. And what is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? He's a prophet. Many prophets before him have come. There's been a history of hundreds of thousands of prophets that we have sent. أَفَإِن مَّاتَ أَوْ قُتِلْ انقلبتم على أعقابكم. If he dies or he's martyred within a battle, you all run away. Why? Why would you run away? He's a prophet of many prophets. He brought you the message. He taught you. If he dies or if he gets killed, you leave. وَمَن يَنْقَلِبْ عَلَىٰ عَقِبَيْهِ فَلَنْ يَضُرَّ اللَّهَ شَيْئًا. And those who run away, they don't harm Islam or harm Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You only harm yourself when you do something like this. وَسَيَجْزِي اللَّهُ الشَّاكِرِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant reward for those who are grateful. The reasoning here is that the Sahaba, some of them who ran that day, when they heard the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam had been martyred, right? It was a reflex. It was a bad reflex. That the leader is gone, so every man for himself. No. See, this cause is not based on a person. Yes, we have a role model. Yes, we have a teacher. Yes, alayhi salatu wasalam is the person who brought us all the teachings. But even if he leaves, Islam lives on. If he leaves, Islam lives on. If Abu Bakr leaves, Islam lives on. It doesn't matter. No matter who passes away, Islam lives on. The cause continues to be there. You carry it equally to the amount that I carry it, equally to the amount that anyone else in this room carries it. We are all responsible for this faith, for these teachings. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is explaining in these verses. He's correcting a problem that they had. What you're basing Islam on his presence, alayhi salatu wasalam. He's a human being. وَمَا جَعَلْنَا لِبَشَرٍ مِّن قَبْلِكَ الْخُلْدِ. We didn't allow anyone to live eternally before you. أَفَإِن مِتَّ فَهُمُ الْخَالِدُونَ. When you die, what do they think others are going to be eternal? No one's eternal. He's going to die at some point, alayhi salatu wasalam. Then what? Imagine had this lesson not happened. Had they not been faced with this example. You see, the Sahaba were faced with the idea of his death, alayhi salatu wasalam, before he died. This is a very important lesson. Meaning, before he actually passed away, the Sahaba experienced a moment where they thought he had passed away, alayhi salatu wasalam. And some of them didn't behave appropriately. And the Quran came and fixed it. No. When this happens, you can't behave like that again. You can't ينقلب على عقبيه. You can't turn back and leave everything that you've learned and leave the cause and leave the deen. No, you can't do that. So when he passed away, alayhi salatu wasalam, later on, the Sahaba were much more prepared and equipped because of the example of Uhud. Islam is not based on a person. And your Islam shouldn't be based on a person either, regardless of who that person is. No one should represent Islam for you, aside from him, alayhi salatu wasalam, ideologically. Meaning in terms of the role model, meaning the role modeling and the learning pieces. But anyone in this world is subject to mistake, is subject to losing their faith. Everyone is. So if you build your faith based on someone, what if they fail? What if they fall? Do you fall too? What if all of the people that you look up to left Islam? Would you leave? This is what this ayah is challenging. Is Islam yours, or are you adjacent to it? Like, are you a core part of this, or you're just affiliated? You just kind of set yourself. Well, you have a few role model people you like, people you respect. They're good Muslims, so you're a good Muslim too. What if they fail? What if they fall? What if they slip? What if they lose it? Then what? Then what? Are you still Muslim? This is the question you have to ask. If everyone in the world, your mentality should be that everyone in the world left Islam, you wouldn't. If everyone in the world, every human being in the world left Islam or countered Islam, that you would not. Because your faith, your conviction of this is not based on a single person or a group of people. And that's what these ayat came and challenged. Oh, so you heard that he passed away, because that's what they said. Why'd you run? Well, we heard that he had passed away. So what? How does that change anything? What does that matter? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ajma'in. Of course, it's going to hurt you. You're going to be in pain. There's no bigger musibah for us than his loss, alayhi salatu wasalam. But you leave in the middle of the battle and you go home. No. We had talked about this last time, so I'll go on. إن الذين تولوا منكم يوم التقى الجمعان إنما استزلهم الشيطان ببعض ما كسبوا ولقد عفى الله عنهم إن الله غفور حليم. Indeed, the people who ran on that day, on the day of Uhud, on the day where the two armies met. إنما استزلهم الشيطان ببعض ما كسبوا. This is an extremely important learning point. Exclusively what happened to them, what really happened to them, is that shaitan was able, he had an inning, he had an entrance into their ears, into their hearts. He was able to use some of their sins as he found a weakening in their defenses. بِبَعْضِ مَا كَسَبُوا. Because of some of the sins that they were making before, their defenses were weaker, and shaitan had an in. And once the shaitan saw the opportunity, he entered and he filled them with fear. And he filled their ears and hearts with nonsense. So they ran. This is why we sin. This is why we make these big mistakes. We make these big mistakes because there's these small sins that you continue to do. You continue to make these small sins. Continue to perform ghiba a lot. You continue to look at haram a lot. Just repeating same things. So there's a weakness. There's a very clear weakness in your defense. Shaitan knows exactly how to get to you if he wants to. So he waits. He waits for the right moment. A moment where there's a high potential of ajr or high potential of punishment. He doesn't care for the small stuff. He's very interested in the high potential moments. That moment when the Sahaba heard Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the Prophet alayhi has been martyred. That is a high potential moment. If you stand your ground in that moment, you're going to bring that with you yawm al-qiyamah. And if you run on that moment, that wasn't a good one. That was a bad choice. So shaitan waited. He waited. And once he saw the opportunity, he said something. And they ran. وَلَقَدْ عَفَى اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ. And indeed, Allah has fully pardoned them. Meaning, clear slate. New page. Forget about it. It's like it didn't happen. Al-afu, that's what afu is. Al-maghfirah is forgiveness, but we'll remind you of it later. Al-afu is we won't ever talk about this again. Put this aside, you will not be reminded of this later on. And they never were. When afu happens, afu means we will never sit down and ever talk about this again. I'll never bring this up in conversation against you again. That's it. I have performed afu. This as if it didn't happen. Later on, when we fight, I won't bring this up again. That's why afu is important. True afu is when you don't bring it back. You can't say I performed afu, and then the next time we argue, you bring it back again. Use it against me. That's not afu. You haven't pardoned. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He pardoned them. Inna Allah ghafurun halim. Subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most forgiving and the most patient. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تكونوا كالذين كفروا وقالوا لإخوانهم إذا ضربوا في الأرض أو كانوا غزا لو كانوا عندنا ما ماتوا وما قتلوا ليجعل الله ذلك حسرة في قلوبهم والله يحيي ويميت والله بما تعملون بصير. Oh, those who believe, don't be like the disbelievers who said to their brethren who came back from the battle of Uhud, لو كانوا عندنا, had you not gone out, had you not performed ghazu, al-ghuzza is the plural of ghazi, and that means someone who goes out to fight, meaning he's not staying back for defense in his home. So they went and they met Quraysh outside of Medina. So they said to them when they came back, had you listened to us and not gone out, مَا مَاتُوا وَمَا قُتِلُوا. The people who died wouldn't have died, and the people who are martyred wouldn't have been martyred. لِيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ ذَلِكَ حَسْرَةً فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow them to carry this in their hearts, meaning this belief in their hearts to the day they die. وَاللَّهُ يُحْيِي وَيُمِيتُ. Allah is the one who grants life and grants death, and Allah sees. We are not permitted to use the if. We can't use the if. You don't know that. You don't know that. You don't know if they stayed that they would have lived. The verse that we had talked about before, I went through this just before the end of Ramadan. ظن الجاهلية, if you can see, ظن الجاهلية, the assumptions that come from a background of jahiliyyah, of ignorance. What was it? يقولون هل لنا من الأمر من شيء. They say, are we able, can we control our destiny in any way? Right? It's a trick question that they're asking. قل إن الأمر كله لله. Say that all matters are in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The outcomes are always in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يخفون في أنفسهم ما لا يبدون لك. ما لا يبدون لك. They hide in their hearts and their minds something that they won't say to you. They won't come out and say what they actually mean. يقولون لو كان لنا من الأمر شيء ما قتلنا هاهنا. If we had any control over destiny, then people wouldn't have died on the day of Uhud. They would have all lived. So the answer from the Quran, قل لو كنتم في بيوتكم لبرز الذين كتب عليهم القتل إلى مضاجعهم. Tell them that if they were in their homes, the people that were going to be killed that night would have been killed in their beds. In their beds they would have died. وَلِيَبْتَلِيَ اللَّهُ مَا فِي صُدُورِكُمْ وَلِيُمَحِّصَ مَا فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts you in these situations to bring out any diseases of the heart that you may carry, and to actually, and to expose what your nafs and what your soul actually carries within it. This problem of saying, if we did this, had we done that. No one knows these things. You don't have the ability to answer these questions. So be careful. Using the hypothetical. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can use the hypothetical. You and I can't. You and I can't say, oh, had I done that, this would have been the outcome. Had I not done this, this would have been the outcome. You don't know that. You don't know that. What you can do is you can learn from a mistake. You can do that. That's fine. You have to do that actually. It's an obligation. One of our problems is we don't seem to learn from mistakes. We keep on repeating them. I don't know why. Certain types of mistakes are so repeated in our ummah. It's concerning. You learn from mistakes. You look at something that you didn't like the outcome, and you correlate that outcome with the mistake. I won't do that again. But don't sit around and say, had I not done that, this would, no. That's not for you. فَإِنَّ لَوْ تَفْتَحُ عَمَلَ الشَّيْطَانِ, as the Prophet ﷺ said. Saying low, saying if, that opens a door for shaitan. Now he has an in. He has an in. Shaitan looks for a way in. That's all he's doing. Because he can't really do much to you. He's very weak. But he looks for a weakness somewhere in your defense. Some opening that you've made. You made an opening. You have a problem with your understanding of Islam. You have a problem with your own repentance. You have a problem with your own sin. So it's an opening that you made. He's just utilizing whatever door you didn't close. That's all. And he enters through it. And then he throws ideas. And he says things to you. And he convinces you of things. And he encourages you to do bad things and discourages you from good things. That's all he does. But he can't make it in. If all of your doors are shut closed, he has no way in. He has no way in. Which is why Ramadan is such a better time for everybody. Which is why Ramadan is just a better time. You can't tell me that you feel today, right now, similarly to the way you felt a month ago. Huh? Impossible. This is like what, the end of April? Remember the end of March? 26th, 27th night, you're saying this is the same? Your heart in the same place? Of course, impossible. Well, impossible. It's different. Because he had nothing, he wasn't around to continue to poke at your defenses. فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَظًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُتَوَكِّلِينَ. So what about the people who ran? The people who ran down the mountain or ran back. The ayah answers it. فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ. It is through the compassion and mercy of Allah. لِنْتَ لَهُمْ. You were lenient with them. You were kind to them. لِنْتَ لَهُمْ. To the people around you. وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَظًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ. And if you were rude, and if you were difficult, if you were harsh, if you had a hard heart, and you used harsh words with speaking to them, لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. They would have all left. They wouldn't have stuck around. It's through it's the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala filled you, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, filled you with His rahmah, that you showed that rahmah poured on to them. And it's because they felt that rahmah that they stuck around. Had you been different, had you been harsh, they would have left you. فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ. So forgive them. Pardon them. you not forgive them. Pardon them. Fa'fu anhum. Pardon the people who ran that day. Allah did, now you do it. Fa'fu anhum. Wastaghfir lahum. And ask Allah to forgive them for their sins. And from that day forward, they were never reminded. They were never said, oh, you're the runner. You're amongst the runners. You're amongst the people who fled, the fleers. You're one of the guys who came down the mountain. They were never reminded of it. Why? Because Allah granted them pardon. He pardoned them. You find this word afu in Surah Al-Imran like 4 times. It's the surah that has the most usage of this word because the sin was grave. تُخَالِفْ أَمْرَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ الصَّلَاةُ وَالسَّلَامُ. You disobey a direct command from the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam during war. Oh, that's a no. Shouldn't have done that. So the answer of the Quran was afu, was pardoning. And then the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was commanded to pardon them. وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ, and ask Allah to forgive them, make dua for them. وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ, and continue to consult them. Consulting people was never an option in Islam. It's a part of how the system works. It's not optional. It's not you can do it, and if you find it's not worth doing, don't do it. No, you do it. You're going to do it. Just in case any of the Sahaba misunderstood and thought this was thought the Prophet ﷺ was doing something extra, involving them for the sake of involving them. No, this is a part of how this system works. You are going to consult them on aspects of governance, governing themselves, choices of their lives, of their dunya. You're going to consult with them. And yes, the majority may make the wrong decision, but the majority will correct that decision. You don't have the opportunity. You don't have the option to decide. You know what? I'm going to take this from. I'll decide for you all. I'll make the decision myself because the majority doesn't seem to know what it's doing. No. شاورهم في الأمر. فإذا عزمت, when you make the decision, فتوكل على الله. Once you have the clarity of what the decision is, enter with the tawakkul على Allah, with full tawakkul upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إن الله يحب المتوكلين. Allah loves those who have tawakkul. That's why that day the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, they came back and told him, right? Remember at the beginning of Uhud, they came and told him, Ya Rasulullah, كأننا أكرهناك. Did we coerce you to do something that you didn't want to do? Asking about leaving Medina. So the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, no, I'm dressed, we're leaving. That's what the majority said. That's what we're going to do. That's what he decided. We're not going to backtrack. He didn't backtrack alayhi salatu wasalam. And it failed. And the Quran came and said, you do it again. So he would do it again on the day of Khandaq, and he would do it again on the day of Mu'tah. He would continue to do this alayhi salatu wasalam all through his life. Teaching Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali, who came later to do the same thing. And as Muslims in the West, I can't talk about Muslims in the Middle East. It's a very different climate there. I'm pretty sure they hear this and don't know what to do with it. But for Muslims in the West, where we have the ability to organize ourselves, we have the potential to fully organize ourselves and to seek the consultation of our congregation and to figure out what we're going to do moving forward, what services need to be offered and what direction we should take. I don't understand why we can't seem to get it done. I don't understand why we still govern our masajid the way Middle Eastern countries govern themselves. The same idea. 7, 8 people that continuously rotate on the board and just do whatever they want. And whatever people desire, need, doesn't matter. Their voices aren't heard and their concerns are not met. I don't understand that. I really don't. I understand it in the Middle East fully, of course. That's how those countries are. You're living, most of them are living under dictatorships where they really don't have much legal room to begin with. Which is why most of you are here to begin with. Why would bring you, aside from the fact that you had... But it's weird that we come here and that we do the same thing. The same thing. Same problem. We ignore, we don't listen. At least act like you're listening. If you listen and don't do, but at least listen. Not even that. Survey people. And then do what you want, but at least survey them. Let them feel that they filled out a form and said what they wanted to say. Not even that. And it's so bad that when we survey people, they don't even fill it out anymore. It's so bad that when we ask people for their opinions, they don't even give it. We offer opportunities, they don't even come. Say, here, come, attend this, tell us what you think. 10 people show up. The system has failed from within. We have a problem. Like we have an actual problem. I have no idea how to fix it. The majority of those who run institutions are responsible for the well-being of the congregations or of the community, the Muslim community in the West, don't care to listen. And the community has become so desensitized that when we actually offer an opportunity to come and tell us, they don't even show up to tell us anymore. That's a problem. There's an actual issue. Because for the majority of what we're doing, I'm shooting in the dark for the majority of it. We know you need to teach Quran, that's an easy one. You teach Quran, some ilm shar'i, do seerah, fine. But for the majority of what we're offering, I don't know, because I don't know how many people we have. I don't know what their struggles are. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know exactly what's going on. So it's dark. I'm just trying. I hope I hit the target. But the Prophet ﷺ spoke to people, and because he spoke to people, and because people were able to express themselves freely and openly with no fear, he knew exactly what was happening around him. He was not. There was no veil drawn upon his eyes or upon the eyes of the people around him. They didn't find out about things later. They didn't hear about a musibah that's been going on for months or for years in a part of the community. He wouldn't find that the community was filled with drug trafficking. He wouldn't find that out suddenly. Like, what? Yes, most of our youth in schools are selling and buying drugs. But where did this come from suddenly? No, he knew if there was a problem, it was picked up early and was dealt with. Because their ear was to the ground and they were listening, they were talking to people. We don't do any of that. We're closed down into our small little circles, little bubbles that we'll exist in. And it's the same way it's what we're used to doing in the Middle East. For my younger brothers and sisters who are listening to me, this is not going to be broken with my generation, just so you know. It's not going to be changed because this is how we grew up. We are the product of the environments that produced us. Most of us don't have the capacity to change. Most of us don't know what needs to change to begin with. And even if we said we want to change, wouldn't know how to start making that change. You have to understand that the way things are running now, the status quo is not healthy. It's not good. And it has to change. And as a younger Muslim, as a second generation or third generation Muslim, who's growing up, who loves their deen and wants the future to be better, you have to be able to recognize the deficits and the failures of the Muslim community and Muslim leadership. You have to forgive us for those shortcomings, but then you also have to figure out a way to overcome them later. I have recently started to lose hope in my generation with change. I've recently stopped hoping. I don't think it's possible anymore. And I have stopped trying to have these conversations with people my age or older. I don't care. Honestly, I just don't care anymore. I don't have an interest in discussing things, and I don't really care whether you listen to me, you lie down, it doesn't matter. Because I feel like we're just a product of something it's like Banu Israel in the 40 years. They just need some time. I think people you need recycling, some new spirits. So the younger generation that are coming up, people in their teens and their 20s, and you have to understand that there are certain behaviors and practices that are not prophetic. They're not Islamic. The Quran was revealed to correct certain misconceptions that the Sahaba had back then 1400 years ago, that the Arab had then, where we had the option somehow to devalue people's input, to devalue the consultation of the masses, to feel that is an option. Because the Arab, that's how it was. You had Sheikh al-Qabila, you had the leader of the tribe and his consultants, and everyone else sat quietly. I grew up like that. I grew up in a society where when men gathered, you were not welcome to speak for any reason, at any juncture within these meetings. And if you did, you'd be kicked out. Your opinion had no value whatsoever. That's not how he did things, alayhi salatu wasalam. Ibn Abbas spoke in his meetings, alayhi salatu wasalam, with adab, but he spoke. And he consulted with Zayd and with Ali. People in their teen years, he listened to them and he involved them. The Arab did that beforehand. And the Quran came and said, this has to change. This is not how you improve. This is not how you grow. And then we regressed back to that again, thinking it's authentic. It's not authentic. Adab is authentic. Dictatorship isn't. Ignoring people's needs is not authentic. There's nothing cute about it. أولما أصابتكم مصيبة قد أصبتم مثليها قلتم أن هذا They started asking, how did we lose with the Prophet ﷺ with us? So now that you have, this is what I is saying, so now that you have suffered a loss, a musibah, that you recently inflicted double that loss upon your enemy. قَدْ أَصَبْتُم مِثْلَيْهَا قُلْتُمْ أَنَّا هَذَا. Your answer, your response, your words are, where did this come from? قُلْ هُوَ مِنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِكُمْ. Say, this is your doing. This is your wrongdoing. You did this. This is your fault. And the Quran took all of what happened on the day of Uhud and put it back on the lap of the Sahaba. No, don't blame someone else for this. Own it. Own it. Own your mistakes. Own what you did. Those who ran down the mountain, those who ran back, those who didn't support others, those who did not advocate, those own your shortcoming. Where did you go wrong? And it's funny that the verses didn't come and say, this verse didn't come and say, the people who made the mistake own it. No, all of them own it, all of us. Why? Because I don't have the option to fragment my community and say, this group here is wrong, fix yourselves. I'll irda ala this group, there's good people here. You guys are fine. You guys fix, no, I don't have that option. When a segment of our society makes a mistake, we all suffer. We all suffer the consequences of that mistake. That's why we all have to fix it. We all have to be involved in correcting it, in repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because we're one body. Because we're one group. We don't have the option to just to pick and choose. I can't distance myself from you because you sinned. I can't say, I have nothing to do with you. No, you're a part of my community. What you're doing is affecting all of us. I am responsible to helping you find your way. Muslims don't do this anymore. We have absolutely fragmented our society. We have completely segregated, and not in the right way. Not in the right way where women have their own interests and men have their own. No, we've segregated as in here are practicing good Muslims and here are people that we don't speak to. Here are the outcasts that we don't care for. And they come to the masjid, we stare at them because they have tattoos or they wear jeans or they haven't covered themselves the way we're used to seeing them. So they don't come to masajid anymore. We've fragmented our own society. The ayah came and said, قُلْ هُوَ مِنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِكُمْ. It's from the collective, all of you. طيب ya Rabb, I didn't do a mistake. No, you don't get to say that. I don't get to say that. I don't get to say that the ummah today is not doing well, but I'm doing just dandy. No, I can't do that. I can't see the ummah in a difficult situation and then say, no, but I'm not the reason. Everyone else is the reason. I'm doing perfect. No, that's not an option. The moment I do that, I've already failed. The moment I think that, I've already made a mistake that I can't fix anymore. طيب, I don't want to. So, see these questions? All of them answered by the Quranic narrative. The Quran came and answered each and every, taught them a lesson. Each of these questions, a lesson that the Sahaba would carry with them later on. How do we feel towards people who sin? Should we be democratic? Should we ask people? Should we go for people? Should we consult the masses? How do we explain our failures when we're up against non-Muslims? There's no nepotism. If they prepared appropriately and we did not, we will lose. Oh, so my Islam is not going to make up for my... No, it's not. If anything, you're required to do more because you understand the equation better. And you're looking for that which they are not looking for. You're looking for ajr from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're just looking for success in dunya. You're looking for the success in dunya and in akhirah. So you're going to do half the work. Wallah. They are looking for success in dunya. You're looking for dunya and akhirah. So you're going to put in half their work. That makes sense to us. How does that make sense? We want at least twice as much as they want. If you're going to treat akhirah as equal to dunya, you say twice. Where akhirah is not equal, it's way more, obviously. So you want way more. You're not going to put in more. You're not going to work day and night. This is a problem. This is the degree of devotion and dedication that our ummah carries right now, that the individuals, the families, the institutions carry towards carrying the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and advancing the causes of this ummah is just not enough. I'm sorry, it's just not enough. It's not enough. But I'm trying hard. I know, not enough. Not enough. I have to try harder. I'll try harder. And then I'll say, nope, still not enough. If it were enough, things would have changed. Why? Because Allah promised. وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَيَسْتَخْلِفَنَّ. Allah made a promise to the collective. He has no promises to the individual, but to the collective, he made promises. He will grant you stewardship. He will grant you safety. He will grant your deen strength and stability. He will grant you all these things if you do what you're supposed to do. So if it's not happening, it's because we're not trying hard enough. We haven't pushed ourselves to the absolute limit. If you think about how the Sahaba were living back then, what they were required to do, people who gave up everything, went to a city that they didn't like, they lost all of their wealth. They were up against all of the odds. They were going against all odds within Arabia. They were underarmed, underprepared, outnumbered, tired and beaten. They've been tortured and mistreated. They were racially profiled for the majority of the time. And then when they make one mistake, the Quran doesn't let it go. You would think that the Quran would be merciful towards them. Khalas, you guys are doing very well. Jazakumullah khair. You made a mistake, a setback. No, the Quran came and said, you're wrong. This is from you. You did this. Don't blame anyone but yourselves. Blame no one but yourself. The Quran they're very harsh verses. Wallah, they are. If you read the Arabic, they're very hard. They're difficult. If Allah is speaking that way to the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ, whom we know He loves more than He loves us, how do you think He would speak to me and you? How would He have spoken to us? Or what would He say about us now? Or what would the Prophet ﷺ share with us now? If this is what was shared with the people who fought Badr and fought Uhud, they fought those battles, they were there. Understand, you carry a sword in the middle of the desert. See how scary that is? You don't. And neither do I won't lie. I've never done that before. You don't know what it means. You know what degree of fear occurs when you're standing in front of people who are carrying swords willing to kill you. When your leader, not just a regular leader, no, your Prophet ﷺ passes away or he's martyred that day. You don't know how you would have behaved. I don't know how I would have behaved. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us for judging others in life. The Sahaba, some of them did the right thing, some of them didn't, some of them kind of half and half. And the Quran came, was very clear. They were forgiven, as you will be, as I will be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guarantees forgiveness. He offers the pardoning to us. It's okay, you'll make mistakes, but you can't act like you didn't. And you can't imagine that you'll walk away from your mistakes with no consequences either. The mistake is being pointed out, you're going to pay for it, you're going to see the consequences of it, but you'll be forgiven. You'll be forgiven. You won't have to pay twice. Dunya, not akhirah. Akhirah, you'll be forgiven if you learn from it, if you change afterwards, if you repent. And if you don't believe that, well then, we'll begin. Year number 3 and 4, and half of 5. So the 2 years from Uhud to Al-Khandaq. All those years were the aftermath of Uhud. After Badr, the stocks of the Muslim nation skyrocketed. Everyone heard about Muhammad ﷺ and his ashab, his companions. The word ashab became known. Muhammadun wa sahbuh. This is the wording they would use. Everyone did, and everyone was interested in this new group. Diverse group. People from Mecca, and Aus, and Khazraj, and Ghifar, and Aslam, and Daws, from all these different tribes coming together, standing up to Quraysh. People didn't like Quraysh. They respected them because they took care of the Kaaba, because they had to. They didn't like them. Tyrants, they were tyrants. They cashed in every time they could. Anytime you needed a favor from Quraysh, they cashed in. They made money off you. And this group stood up to them and beat them. And beat them, with a big bang. A great battle where their leaders fell, where Utbah ibn Rabi'a and Shayba and Abu Jahl, Abu al-Hakam ibn Hisham and al-Bukhturi, they fell that day. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. So people came up to the Prophet ﷺ asking to sign treaties of peace. People who were living around Medina, the tribes that existed around him. The Prophet ﷺ had now a couple of treaties, 10, 15 treaties in his hand that he had signed with other tribes, that they would not harm the Muslims. They would allow the Muslim caravans to make their way for tijara. They would not work with Quraysh against them. Pretty good. They're feeling safer. Then Uhud happened, and they lost, and the stock plummeted. And the stock plummeted. It hit rock bottom. the battle of Al-Khandaq, like the battle itself, is one of the results of Uhud. Like the battle of Khandaq itself is the aftermath of Uhud. It's not its own entity. No, it happened because of Uhud, because of the loss in Uhud. It wouldn't have happened had Uhud not occurred. Had they won on the day of Uhud, Khandaq as a battle would have never happened. The story would have been very different had they not lost. Of course, I can't say if because that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it's the point that I want to make. The tribes that were around in Medina, the Jewish tribes, Ahlul Kitab, that were there, they started wondering, what do we do with this constitution that we signed with him? Do we keep it? Do we tear it up? I mean, they lost. Is he done? Is it over? Do we not have to respect this citizenship anymore? Yes, this constitution kept their rights, but they were happier before. Why? Because they were able to abuse Al-Aws wal-Khazraj and take advantage of them. They were able to take full advantage of Al-Aws wal-Khazraj and stay and keep them fighting amongst themselves and keep themselves powerful and wealthy. When the Prophet ﷺ came, no, it leveled things out a bit. Their religious and financial rights were preserved, but now he leveled the ground a bit. They didn't like it. They start to wonder, maybe now we don't have to respect this anymore, which is why on the day of Al-Khandaq which is why 3 of those tribes are going to be expelled out of the city. Over the next couple of weeks I'll tell you these stories, because they all thought maybe it's the right time to take a jab at him. Maybe we can end this by killing him. And 3 tribes will try and kill him. Not all of the Jewish tribes. Many of them stayed, by the way. There were many tribes. There were like maybe 10 tribes. Just 3 of them that were expelled. The hypocrites, the munafiqeen, they're using this philosophical argument. If you listened, this wouldn't have happened. It's all because now they have an upper hand over the Muslims. They're using it against them. That it's your ignorance, it's your lack of experience, it's your lack of this, it's your lack of that. We knew better. They feel weaker. The Muslimin, they feel a bit weaker than the hypocrites. They were weakened by Uhud. All of the tribes that had treaties with the Prophet ﷺ around Medina started to wonder, maybe we shouldn't have done that. It was a fluke. Badr was just a fluke. It was just a one-time thing. Badr was not, people thought Badr was the real deal. It was, obviously, because we're sitting here. It was. But when Uhud happened, they're like, maybe we were too hasty. Maybe we shouldn't have signed these treaties. Because they felt, Muhammad ﷺ with 300 took out 1,000 of Quraysh. There were more people on horseback in that army than the whole army of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ's army, they had more people on horseback than the whole army. And they still lost. They thought, this is a different story. So they signed those treaties. After Uhud, like, maybe Quraysh has always been, you know, when the underdog wins, you're always wondering, is it real? Will they keep on going, or is it just a one-time victory? So a lot of the tribes wanted to, and those were the beginning of the consequences of the day of Uhud. So let's talk about the first one. A man by the name of Khalid ibn Sufyan al-Hudhali. Khalid ibn Sufyan was a warlord, a mercenary, someone who did nothing else but lead battles for money. He was paid to do these things. He knew how to do it. He was very good at it. He had access to people. He knew people who knew people. And he was capable of bringing large groups of people and getting jobs done. Abu Sufyan and a bunch of other leaders from Banu Nadir and Banu Qaynuqa, from the tribes within Medina, and Abdullah ibn Ubay bin Salul, they had conspired over, we can't, maybe we don't fight him ourselves. Maybe we pay someone to do it. And that way we can get rid of him or weaken him without needing to actually bring our own tribes into the story. Very smart. So they put a lot of wealth together and they paid Khalid bin Sufyan al-Hudhali. And they told him, gather an army and go after Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And we will pave the way for you. Like we'll make sure that no one will confront you. None of the tribes that have treaties with him will come by. We'll make sure that you have good access. The Prophet ﷺ knew the story. He understood what was happening. He understood what this was. He knew that it was a distraction that Quraysh put there. The Prophet ﷺ's battle is with Quraysh. Quraysh is the group that are depriving him his right to speak about his deen. They are outlawing Islam and outlawing him as a person who's speaking about a faith. That's what they're doing. His struggle is with them. خَلُّوا بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ. Allow me to speak about Islam. Allow people to accept Islam freely. And stop harming us. And you do your thing. We have nothing. his struggle was with Quraysh. Quraysh wanted to distract him. So this army that he was putting together, Khalid bin Sufyan, was a distraction. So the Prophet ﷺ had no interest in fighting him. He had no interest in bringing an army and combating him. So he called upon a 26-year-old gentleman by the name of Abdullah bin Unais. Abdullah bin Unais, we have almost no other stories for him in Islam. Very few. He continued to obviously participate in the futuhat after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, and he died a mujahid, anhu, late 50 years after the Prophet ﷺ had passed away. But the only story I have for him within Seerah is this one. Is narrated in the collection of Imam Ahmad, and it has an authentic chain of narration. So this is a legit story. He called upon Abdullah bin Unais. He told him, look, تذهب إلى مكان كذا وكذا. You go to this place where, because the Prophet ﷺ had his intelligence, and people told him where, Talha and Sa'id told him exactly where Khalid was rallying the troops. Now the Prophet ﷺ understood that it was a mercenary job. Mercenary jobs, they're brutal because the people who are coming in have no mercy. These are people who are paid to fight, so they don't care. They're relentless, and they lack any degree of compassion. That's number one. But number two is that they are usually not fighting for something they believe in. So you can easily get rid of them if you just remove the one person who is, or the one reason that they're there. The reason that all of these troops are being gathered from the different tribes is because of Khalid bin Sufyan, because of his connections, and because of the fact that he is paid, and he is going to use that money to pay the different groups to come and fight with him. So if you kill Khalid bin Sufyan, if you get him out, then the rest of the tribe will just go home. Like there'll be no army. It's just based on this one person. Causes don't happen, don't fizzle out like that. But mercenaries do. So he called Abdullah bin Unais and told him, look, you need to go to this area, and you need to take out Khalid bin Sufyan. فقال يا رسول الله انعته لي حتى أعرفه. I don't know this person. Describe him to me. So the Prophet ﷺ tells him, إذا رأيته أصابتك قشعريرة وقلت رأيت الشيطان. So when you see him, you will have a shiver up your spine, and you'll tell yourself for a moment, that is shaitan right there. صلى الله عليه وسلم أجمعين. And that's all I'm going to tell you about him. فقال كيف أصنع؟ قال اصنع كيف شئت. Like, how do I do this? I don't know, figure it out. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Go figure out how to, you take him out. I don't want that army marching towards us. Because it's a distraction. Now we have to fight another. Why is this happening? Because they felt the Sahaba, the Muslims, were weakened after Uhud. So they could do this. So Abdullah bin Unais would take his sword, would gallop on his horse towards the area that Khalid bin Sufyan was doing this. And he would get amongst the groups. He would find a lot of people coming together, a lot of troops setting camp, preparing themselves, a lot of transactions happening, discussions upon payment, but also a lot of chanting. The mercenaries usually, they have long nights of celebration and chants and to rally their troops. So before Abdullah ibn Unais left, he said, Ya Rasulullah, إِذَنْ تَأْذَنْ لِي أَنْ أَقُولُ. Then I need your permission to say things. Like I'll say things that I don't mean, but I have to say if I'm going to get in the midst of it all. فَقَالَ قُلْ مَا شِئْتَ. Say what you want. So he took that permission, radiallahu anhu. He would go, he would find all this, he would get amongst the people and start chanting. And he would chant the loudest. And he would chant the most aggressive chants. Like they would be saying something, and he would say something a little bit ahead, gaining it to every night. Why? To gain a little bit of attention. And he gained enough attention that someone came and asked, Man ar-rajul? Now in Arabia, the problem there is that your family name is your passport. Once you say who you are, people will know your loyalties. If he explains that he is Abdullah ibn Unais ibn Amr ibn al-Harith ibn Auf from al-Khazraj, it's obvious. It's obvious he was sent to, because why he's coming from. Nah, I don't. We know where you're coming from. This is not. You're not fooling anybody. So he can't tell people, and he can't make something up. People know. But now today, if you walk in, I don't know you. Assalamu alaikum. You can make up a name, make up a last name, make up a country as far as I'm concerned, and I'll believe you. I have no idea. There's too many countries and too many cities and too many families. No one knows anything. We're just, inshallah, inshallah, you're a good person, and hopefully you don't, But back then in Arabia, no, your name, your family name was a way for you to be identified. So they asked him, من الرجل فقال رجل من العرب يكره صلى الله عليه وسلم محمد أكثر منك. A man from Arab, Arabic who like you despises Muhammad more than you do. يعني, and Khalid bin Sufyan al-Hudhali said, أهلا بالرجل, well, welcome, with a man who despises him more than me. And over the course of the next week, Abdullah bin Unais would volunteer harder, would work longer hours, and he would get really close. And he would rank himself up, not as a commander, but as a guard. And he would be put on guard one night in the tent of Khalid bin Sufyan al-Hudhali. And in the middle of the night, once everyone was asleep, he would go in and he would get the job done. Unfortunately, someone would walk into the room afterwards, see it, scream. Abdullah bin Unais had to run. And he couldn't get his horse because there was no time, so he had to run. In the middle of the night, he ran. He had to run in the opposite direction of Medina because that was the only choice. And he had to spend the next 2 weeks in the mountains, eating leaves off trees, because people were looking for him. After around 10 days, they gave up. And as the Prophet ﷺ predicted, after Khalid bin Sufyan al-Hudhali was taken out, the rest of the tribes took their money and they left. There was nothing to bind them to this contract, so they left as the Prophet ﷺ predicted. But Abdullah bin Unais had to stay hidden for a while to survive. And once they stopped looking for him, he made his way back to Medina. He walked back. It took him around 3 weeks to get back. Within that period, the Prophet ﷺ every day would go stand at the outskirts of Medina looking to see, and then go back just before Maghrib and after Fajr to see, day in, day out, until he, on one of the days he stood there, he saw a person walking, tired. He saw him from afar. فقال يا عبد الله أفلح الوجه. Oh, Abdullah, is the face that I'm seeing a successful face? Did you get the job done? فقال نعم يا رسول الله. Yes, Ya Rasulullah, I did the job. فقال تعال, come, تعال إلي, come to me. أكافئك, I'm going to reward you. So Abdullah bin Unais came with the Prophet ﷺ. The Sahaba, of course, hear that Abdullah came back, that it was successful, that the army is gone. Alhamdulillah, Wallahu Akbar. They're all taking Abdullah, hugging him and thanking him and praising him. And they're walking towards the Prophet ﷺ's house. Because why? The Prophet ﷺ told me that he's going to reward me. So they're all going with him, because they want to see what the Prophet ﷺ is going to give Sayyidina Abdullah. So they go and they stand in front of the Prophet ﷺ's door, in front of the home. And the Prophet ﷺ enters the house. And he comes out after a few moments. قال أين أنت يا عبد الله? Where are you, Abdullah? Abdullah is standing there. He's he's hungry and he's tired, but he's very proud. It's a proud moment. And I'm here. Ya Rasulullah, give me. قال فأخذ عصا. He had a stick عليه الصلاة والسلام. فقال إليك هذه العصا يا عبد الله. Here's your stick, Ya Abdullah. And the Prophet ﷺ would go into the room. So Abdullah would walk out and he's carrying a stick. فقالوا ما أعطاك رسول الله? What did the Prophet ﷺ give you? فقال أعطاني هذه العصا. He gave me the stick. فقال ولما? And why? فقال والله ما سألته. I didn't ask him. I don't know why. فقال عد فاسأله. Go back and ask him, why did he give you the stick? Like, what are you going to do with it? What's the stick? فقال نعم. Yes, I should have asked him that question. But Abdullah goes back and he knocks bashfully on the door of the Prophet عليه. So for the Prophet opens. نعم, what do you want? فقال يا رسول الله جزاك الله خيرا. Thank you for this stick that you gave me. لكن ما أصنع بها? What do I do with it? فقال هذه بينة بيني وبينك. This is going to be a sign between you and me. إذا رأيتني على الحوض يوم القيامة ترفعها تقول يا رسول الله هذه العصا أدخلك بها الجنة. When you see me on the basin on the day of judgment, you carry the asa and you say, Ya Rasulullah, the asa, the stick that you gave me, and I will call you and I will bring you into Jannah. صلى الله عليه وسلم أجمعين. يقولون فكان عبد الله قد جعل عصاه على سيفه. He had this stick, it was tied around his sword. تكون معه حيث يذهب. Wherever he goes, it's with him. قال ثم جعل في وصيته أن تدفن معه إذا مات فدفنت. And then he put in his will that when I die, this stick goes in the grave with me. فصلى الله وسلم وبارك على من ربط قلب شاب بالجنة بعصاه. Allah's praise and blessings upon someone who tied a young man's heart to Jannah with a stick. صلى الله عليه وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. So we only have 5 minutes. I think, is it too late? Okay, so I was supposed to stop and let you guys do Kahoot, but I forgot. Do you want to do it after Salat al-Isha? I think it's too late. We'll just do it inshallah ta'ala next week. I'm sorry, I forgot. So that was the first act of treason that happened. I'm going to talk to you over the next 2-3 weeks about at least 3 more large acts of treason that would occur because of Uhud. To be more clear to you, when you read Surah At-Tawbah, the beginning of Surah At-Tawbah, that talks about where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet ﷺ to no longer leave the mushrikeen tribes around Medina and to kick them all out. The reason this happened is because of the number of times they betrayed their treaties with the Prophet ﷺ. All of these betrayals happened after Uhud, all of them. All of these betrayals would occur because of Uhud, because people felt that it was a fluke. And at some point, the Muslims were going to fall. And Quraysh would continue, and then they would have to go back and pay for the fact that they were allies with the Prophet ﷺ. You can pay for one mistake for the rest of your life. Meaning you can live with the consequences of one mistake for the rest of your life. It can happen sometimes. Someone recklessly drives, la samahullah, and has an accident. And that accident leaves them severely injured, la samahullah. May Allah protect everyone here, inshallah. Especially those who are newly learning to drive. You are driving a weapon. It's 1,000 kilos of metal. You can kill yourself and others. Someone makes one bad mistake, one bad judgment, and they harm themselves, and for the rest of their lives, they pay for that one day. It can happen. But what shouldn't happen is you shouldn't live your life in the what if piece. Because that is something you don't have the ability to think about, to judge, or to talk about. That is left up to Allah. You're a Muslim, you leave that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what I have, this is my reality. Alhamdulillah. I accept it. I don't like it, but I accept it. That's number one. Number two, you learn from your mistake. Meaning you acknowledge that you did something wrong. And then you make sure that you don't continue to make that mistake moving forward. And you advocate. You advocate towards making sure that others don't make that mistake. This is what you do. The Muslims had to live, the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba ﷺ, had to live with the consequences of the day of Uhud. The 40 guys who ran down the mountain and the group that ran back to Medina. They cost the Muslims a lot. But they were not continuously reminded of it. It was pardoned. It was put aside. There was no what if and what if. Put all that aside. They learned the lesson and they moved on. They learned the lesson and they moved on. I am pointing this out to you just to understand that just because you are pardoned or forgiven, or just because you admit your mistake, doesn't mean that you get to walk away from your mistake free, consequence-free. No, you can't. It's not how life works. This generation, wallahi, this is a problem that you have to, this upcoming doesn't seem to understand that. They think that sorry solves it all. It doesn't. You owe sorry when you make a mistake, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to walk home free. Sometimes you owe things and you're going to have to pay your dues. It doesn't mean that you can't be forgiven. It doesn't mean that you won't be forgiven. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that Allah won't love you. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be a good person and do great things later on in life. It just means you made a mistake and you have to pay for the consequences of that mistake. Learn that early in life and you'll live better. And you'll be less upset, you'll be less disgruntled, and you'll also make less mistakes because you'll learn from them up front. I'll end with that, inshallah ta'ala. Subhanakallah bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina wa habibina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Jazakumullahu khair wa barakallahu feekum. Assalamu